As per my brief statement last week, I said I would do a full update of what's happened, the decisions I made and why. To that end, here's a little video explaining some of my thinking, but also I have put in the website link where I fully explain with a Q&A about the decisions that I've taken, what's happened and what's going to happen in the future. What happened and why? You can read the long version of this on my website or many of the newspapers, but in short, this is all kicked off after the Deputy Chief Whip resigned after getting drunk at a club and then having inappropriate behaviour that's now being looked into. Number 10 dealt with the issue and then briefed out to ministers and colleagues that this had been the case. However, it transpires through statements to Parliament and evidence coming forward that this may not well have been the case. As a result, 2 Secretaries of State handed in their resignation, and then several ministers followed this up. When this happens, it can often bring down a government because the Prime Minister doesn't have the confidence of his cabinet and some of his ministers. Well, as time went on the Wednesday and into Thursday, more resignations happened and the Prime Minister decided not to step down until middle of Thursday morning when he announced his resignation. So what did I do during this time and why didn't I go to the public sooner? The way an MP raises concerns is through their whips, which is what I did, but when it realised that things weren't perceiving to change, you have a couple of choices to make. Now, I currently hold a role as an unpaid parliamentary private secretary in the Home Office, and I'm also a backbencher. So I could do nothing, I could tender my resignation as a PPS, or I could speak to the 1922 committee chair, Sir Graham Brady, and let him know that I have lost confidence in the current Prime Minister. Now, while I'd love to think I have delusions of grandeur and my resignation would have made a difference after the fact that 2 Secretaries of State and several ministers had handed in their resignation, it became clear that me handing in my PPS resignation would not make a difference. Plus, there is a huge amount of work still to be done because I act as the conduit for MPs with their passport concerns. Now, given the amount of problems that have been being dealt with over the last few months, I thought it was really important that this role continues and government keeps moving forward. I spoke to Graham Brady on the Wednesday to let him know that I'd lost confidence in the Prime Minister, but the reason I didn't let this known in public is because I didn't want the media creating hysteria that we've already seen in other issues such as Brexit, Ukraine and the pandemic. And I think there's much more time spent actually making a difference rather than passing commentary as we go through a difficult process. The other thought is, things were changing so quickly, I didn't want to brief out to the public something that wasn't true then in the future. A bit like when I was a doctor, I wouldn't give you a diagnosis of diabetes on social media. I think it's right and proper that due diligence is taken to make sure you have the facts and best information that you give to the people you represent when it's appropriate. Hence me filming this video now. Now, some of you will say, well, didn't you just vote for Boris Johnson only a month ago in the vote of no confidence? Well, this is absolutely correct. I personally had seen a huge change in the way Number 10 had dealt with both me and the processes behind the scenes in the last 6 months since the Sue Gray report, and that's what she commented on, that there had been changes. For that reason, I was happy to vote to have confidence in the Prime Minister, even though, admittedly, as I've said in public, that was shaken. This changed, however, with the statement by the Health Secretary and the resignation by one of the ministers, Will Quince, when it became clear that what was said had happened had not been the case. Finally, some will argue this was a coordinated attempt by the mainstream media, opposition and MPs to bring down the Prime Minister. I've seen no evidence for that from where I'm sat, but it's fair to say the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has definitely come in for harsh criticism and possibly personal attacks over the years, which are left founding. I can't comment on that, but all I can say is privately I saw no coordinated effort. This was a group of MPs who'd come to the same realisation that something needed to change. It's bitterly disappointing that the Prime Minister who delivered so much has ended up having to resign. I hope that explains a little bit of my thinking. Please do check out my website where it's written out in black and white for you to see. Most importantly, we now have a leadership election, and I'll be speaking to all the candidates to make sure that Bosworth and the nation gets the best representation possible.